Good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Mancuso, and I serve as the Communications and Outreach Senior Specialist for the Summer Health Professions Education Program, also known as SHPEP. For those of you who are unaware, SHPEP is a free 6-week summer enrichment program for college freshmen and sophomore students who are interested in the health professions. To learn more, please visit shpep.org. Tonight, our audience is comprised of active scholars, SHPEP alumni, pre-health advisors, and anyone who's interested in learning more about the pharmacy pathway. That being said, I'd like to introduce Rosie Walker. She serves as the Director of Recruitment and Diversity at the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy and will lead tonight's presentation. Please be sure to use the Q&A feature to ask any questions during tonight's session. And as always, SHPEP webinars are posted on our YouTube channel within a week of the live viewing. Rosie, please feel free to take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Tony. I appreciate the introduction, and hello, everyone virtually. Thank you so much for allowing me to share some information about AACP, the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy, and pharmacy, and how that might be right for you. So, as you mentioned, my name is Rosie Walker. I'm the Director of Recruitment and Diversity. I've been at AACP for 4 years, and anytime throughout the presentation, I love to be real interactive. Virtual has, shut me down a little bit, but anytime you have questions, I really encourage engaging at any point. So feel free to jump in whenever you feel the need. So just to kind of give you a little overview, AACP as an organization represents all of the different schools of pharmacy throughout the U.S. Currently, there are 144 of them, and we just, AACP is the organization, but Pharmacy is Right for Me is a marketing campaign that we have that's really focused on students that are considering pharmacy. So it's a great starting point to just kind of get more information regarding pharmacy education and careers and different career pathways and things of that nature. So make sure that you are following us on our social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, because we do a lot of different giveaways as well as a lot of information that may be useful throughout your journey. So make sure you're following us. Some more resources that are on the Pharm for Me webpage. We have a lot of different blog posts. So just highlighting pharmacists' role in the COVID vaccine or do's and don'ts of pharmacy schools are some of the many topics that you can find in our blogs. We also have different pharmacist bios. So you can kind of see the day in the life of pharmacists and the different career paths. And I'll talk more about that a little later because I know that's one big misperception about pharmacy is that all pharmacists work, in a retail setting dispensing medication. But we also have our Campus Corner page. As I mentioned, we have 144 different schools. And so when you're thinking about where do I start, how do I narrow these schools down, our Campus Corner page kind of gives you a little insight to that as well as a video about the different schools. We also have different resources that you can print out and share, especially if there's educators on the call that you want to give to your students. One of our most recent is our 100+ pharmacy careers. Did you even know there was that many? And so you can read about some of the different career pathways in that one pager. We also have a novel pharmacy career page. So these are like some untraditional roles. There's a penguin pharmacist. There are, a YouTuber pharmacist that falls into the social media platform. So they really highlight all of these different career pathways that are unique that some pharmacists have taken to choose to do. We also have our Instagram page is the student takeovers. And so we know that prospective students who are considering pharmacy love to hear from a student's perspective. So they're going to give you the real deal from a student's perspective, not only classes in terms of, pharmacy schools and labs, but also how they do that work-life balance in terms of some of their extracurricular activities and even how COVID has impacted them becoming virtual. So make sure you're following us on social media. We try to feature a different student every month. And so that's a great resource to get some behind the scenes look at what it's like to be a pharmacy student. So now kind of talking about different career pathways. When we think about pharmacists, sometimes we're not really sure what pharmacists do. Anytime you're in a healthcare setting and there's a doctor and there's a nurse there, 99% of the time there is a pharmacist within that healthcare team as well. But what are they doing as part of that, collaborative healthcare initiative? So some things that pharmacists do are really educating patients on medication use, not only the patients, but other healthcare professionals, even doctors, sometimes. So pharmacists are really those medication experts to really educate patients and other healthcare providers on the use of that medication. They also help prevent medication errors. I have hundreds of stories about, pharmacists or a patient being prescribed a medication, not realizing that patient was already taking a different medication. And so if they were to take those two together, that could have really adverse effects. So pharmacists really can catch those errors. But also pharmacists can have one-on-one patient care where they're taking their vital signs, checking on their progress. And so when we talk about some of the career pathways, there is a lot of patient care centered career pathways centered around that pharmacists do. Ensuring the drug purity, making sure it's not harmful, providing drug advice, and even modifying drugs to fit the patient's needs, specifically for children, for animals, and things of that nature. So when we talk about pharmaceutical care, so that's kind of what the pharmacist does, but this is the care component of that, where pharmacists actually work towards curing diseases and eliminating or reducing the symptoms that certain patients may experience, improving the patient's overall health and making it easier for patients to take different medications, and also researching new drugs. There's so many advances that are occurring within healthcare, and pharmacists are really on the front line of really helping to research and develop those new drugs. So if I had to sum it up in one sentence, thank you for adding that link to the chat, but if I had to sum it up in one sentence, I would just, if anyone asks you about pharmacy, just pharmacists are medication experts. So no one knows more about medication than your pharmacist. So as we move on with different career pathways, I wanted to take a quick minute to, I should have had this already, but I'll do it real quick, to kind of engage you in terms of our pharmacy career quiz. So if any of you have thought about becoming a pharmacist and you're not sure what career pathway may be best for you, I just put in a chat the link to our career quiz. And so I'll give you a few minutes. It's really easy. They ask simple questions like, what's your favorite subject? Where do you like to volunteer? So if some of you want to take a minute to take the quiz and then start to type in the results that you got, that can be a fun activity that we can kind of do if you want to participate in that. So I'll just give you like a minute to go through that, but the link is in the chat. And then you can just start to type in what your results were. And while you're doing that, I'll just kind of move ahead, but please feel free to add them in there. I'll pop back to the chat later. But some of the results that may come up that you may not have even known about pharmacists. So there are nuclear pharmacists. So nuclear pharmacists actually work with radioactive drugs that cure diseases like cancer. There's pediatric pharmacists that work specifically with 18 years and under population, because their needs are going to be different, and there's one drug, and so you sometimes have to alter that to be compatible with a child or someone younger. And compounding pharmacists do that very thing. They take drugs and they customize them to fit that patient's needs. So if it's taking a pill and making it to a liquid or adding different medications within topical creams. Those are things that compound pharmacists do. There's ambulatory care pharmacists. So those are pharmacists when I talked about that actually meet with patients. They have rounds that they go and check on the patients and really have those one-on-one encounters with them. Cardiology pharmacists, they really focus on medications that are specifically for your heart. Emergency room pharmacists, as I mentioned, the doctors and nurses are rushing to treat patients, but there's pharmacists right there too, making sure that the IVs and different medications are suitable for that patient. There's even psychiatric pharmacists, and there has been an increase in those due to, some of the health and well-being that patients have experienced through COVID and different ways that the medication can impact that. Geriatric pharmacists working with our senior citizens, infectious disease. COVID is one example of that, but Ebola, even there was a pharmacist that was really instrumental in, addressing that issue. Poison control, veterinary, and then of course your community pharmacist, which is at your local CVS, Walgreens, all of your different drugstores. And one fact about community pharmacists is that community pharmacist is a doctor within 3 miles of your home, and you have access to them very easily as other doctors, where you actually have to make an appointment to go into. So those were just some of the careers that I wanted to highlight. And nobody typed anything. Did you guys not take the quiz? It's okay. Maybe you'll still take it in and type later because I was going to read some of the results. But moving right along. So why would you choose pharmacy? There's so many different pathways within healthcare, but pharmacy really is a well-rounded career path. A lot of pharmacists indicate that they have work-life balance. They're able to manage families, which is why there's a lot more women that may be in the pharmacy field. Pharmacists are also a vital part of a healthcare team. Even though they're not automatically recognized, they are there. They are very vital. There's outstanding career opportunities, as I mentioned, just a few in the slides before, but there's 101 different things. And with regards to those career opportunities, it's a lot easier for pharmacists to go from different careers without having to get a special certification or different things like that. So it's really easy to transition within your career. Excellent earning potential. The average salary for a pharmacist is $120,000, and pharmacists still are one of the most trusted professionals that in the healthcare. All right. So are there any questions so far? I'm in the chat, so I might need to go to the Q&A. But if there's any questions so far about pharmacy careers, you can feel free to type them or ask them, but I'll keep moving on. So now, applying to pharmacy school, PharmCAS is the centralized application service that allows you to apply to multiple pharmacy schools using one application, okay? And so a lot of different healthcare pathways use this CAS system so that it's, like the Common App and different things like that. So it just makes it a lot easier for the applicant to have all their information centrally located so that they can, use that same information to apply to different schools. So our PharmCAS website, we just redid it. And so it's a brand new website, new logos. All of the pictures that are on the website are actual photos from our students at our different schools of pharmacy. And so really just kind of, having our website be more authentic, I guess, instead of different stock photos. That was a question, sorry. So on the PharmCAS website, there is a PharmCAS directory. As I mentioned, there's 144 different schools, and so you can use the directory to narrow it down by region. If you know you want to stay on the West Coast or the East Coast, location, if you want to specifically stay in Virginia or whatever state that you're in, if that school requires the PCAT or not, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit, the accreditation, the public school, private schools. So there's different ways that you can filter to narrow down these 144 schools, depending on what is important to you when you're selecting a different school. So that's a great feature, and you can even compare them. So let's say you narrow it down and you click, like, you know, when you're shopping for shoes and you narrow them down and then they have all the comparisons side by side. The new directory does that as well. So it's very easy to navigate and really helpful in narrowing down your choices. There's also a great video on YouTube on how to actually use the directory. So they'll walk you step by step, and it's only 7 minutes. But you know, you can click on that, and the link, I'm sure we may share these PowerPoints, but the link to all of the things that I'm referencing are in the notes. And so you can walk through that tutorial as well. There's also different resources on PharmCAS regarding virtual interviews. I know that was a new concept for schools when applying, because you know they did the in-person interviews before, and so there were some virtual do's and don'ts. I think we were all kind of getting used to, you know, being in our personal settings, our personal environments during professional times, and so this really helps provide a lot of tips in terms of do's or don'ts for virtual interviewing for pharmacy school. So applying to pharmacy school, similar to when you apply to undergrad or things like that, the different components make up the PharmCAS application, your official transcripts, PCAT scores, letters of recommendation, and your personal statement. And so I'll kind of move through these components. So this is what the application portal looks like when you create your account and log in. And one tip is to really create an account early so that you have your ID number, so that anytime you get any other information, you have that ID number to add it to, as opposed to having things in different places. They can all be located easily together with your ID number. So if you know you're getting ready to apply to pharmacy school, but you haven't done anything yet, or asked for letters of recommendation or anything, just create that user account as soon as possible so that you have that ID number, so that when you do start to get that other information. But as I mentioned, it's just your general personal information, your academic history, all of the supplemental materials, and then program materials. And so with that, some schools may, I'll go back, I know I went through that, but these are the materials that are required in PharmCAS. And so when I talk about supplemental materials, sometimes each school of pharmacy may have additional application that you have to do. They may have additional fees or additional tests that you have to take. So it really depends on the school. And not many of them have too many supplemental items, but you can filter that down within the PharmCAS directory. So when applying to pharmacy school, I like to always be transparent about cost, because, you know, I was a first generation college student, and applying to graduate programs was expensive. In terms of the applications, in terms of the testing, in terms of, you know, going to interview. And so when you are saving and doing things, you want to be mindful of all of these costs that may not be covered in different loans or, you know, scholarships and things like that. Just out-of-pocket costs you have to be mindful of. So with PharmCAS, it's $175 to apply to your first program, and then $55 for each additional program. So you can apply to as many or as few schools as you want to. Currently, with our data, students apply to around 3 schools. It's about like 2.5 or 6 schools. And so students are really being a lot more selective in terms of the schools that they were going to, where in the past they may apply to 4 or 5 schools. And so I talked about the supplemental materials. Now, with regards to transcripts, You do need official transcripts for every institution that you've attended. If you've done a study abroad or something like that, that can be reflected on that transcript. But if you did attend like a community college and then a 4-year, and then maybe did a summer course somewhere, you will need transcripts for all of those schools. And then they don't do student issued transcripts. So you can't ask your school to give you your transcripts and then you give them to PharmCAS. They have to go straight from the school to PharmCAS. And then the transcript deadlines are not enforced on PharmCAS because there are different deadlines for each school. And so every month, once you're in the system, they will send you an email and say, these are the schools whose deadline is, December 1st. And these are, so each school has a different deadline date, and that's something that you have to be mindful of. And then you can send your updated spring and summer transcripts to the school and still apply by that deadline with the transcripts that you have. And if your school uses electronic transcripts, request them whenever possible. They get into the system a lot faster, and it usually is a lot easier process to do on your end as well. In terms of your personal statement, I always find that students think that this is the most difficult part of applying when it's really the personal part. There's no right or wrong answer in terms of a personal statement. It really is just coming from what you believe are your strengths and why you want to pursue a career in pharmacy, what your goals and things are. And so I really just encourage, when you write your statement, to be authentic, to really think about the school that you're applying to and some of the strengths at that school and how they align with your goals. And then, of course, use your own words. I know that sometimes I get writer's block and I know what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it. But I find sometimes just talking your personal statements out with someone and maybe even recording it on your phone and being able to type it later sometimes is a little easier. But just, use your personal experience. Make sure you note all of your educational experience and even note any issues that may be noted in your transcript. I know that I was on academic probation my first year of undergrad. And so I kind of talked about why and, how I progressed and grew and just learned how to navigate college. Being a first generation, that was a difficult adjustment for me. And so if there's any things that, and even COVID now, it may be your senior year and COVID hit and, now you have this dip in your academics, that's something that you can also address in your personal statement, but also address how you plan or how you have overcome that. And then just one tip is just to copy and paste from Notepad into the system, because sometimes the formatting is different within our different systems. So in terms of your references or letters of recommendation or evaluations, they're called different things on different systems, but you really want to notify your recommenders as early as possible so that you give them a lot of time to be able to write a good letter for you, and pick someone that knows you. I know sometimes we try to pick like the deans or someone with a very high title at our institution, but they may not have that personal relationship with you. And so that won't really shine through the letter as much as someone that has really gotten to know you and know your strengths and your career goals and things like that. So it's important to choose someone that really knows you, but ask them early. And then when you do, you just enter the name and the email addresses, and you can enter up to 4 of them in there. And this is what the portal looks like. So when your recommender receives instructions on doing the recommendation for you, they'll have this grid that kind of asks about your judgment, your leadership, your reliability, and then a place where they can upload a letter. And so that just kind of gives you a general sense of some things that they're asking and looking for when they're doing references. So with regards to the PCAT, so the PCAT, just like, the SAT, the GMAT, LSAT, all those standardized tests, is the pharmacy college admissions test. So that's the test that is used to gauge how effective you could potentially be in pharmacy school. The scores range from 200 to 600, but when we look at PCAT scores, we look at different percentiles. So the average percentile for students that are accepted into pharmacy school is around 60. The test is 3 hours and 25 minutes, and it costs $210 to take. And so once again, when we're calculating those costs, you need to add that 210 to the 125 to the 55, and starting to get up there in terms of cost. But the good news, so only 4% of our schools of pharmacy require the PCAT. Now, this has been something when we do talk about holistic admissions and really looking at objective or soft skills that students have, those are things that PCAT scores cannot gauge. They cannot gauge how resilient you are. They cannot gauge your grit. They cannot gauge, different things about students and individuals that can make them successful, that can make them, be great pharmacists. And so schools of pharmacy are starting to recognize that, and more and more of them are not requiring it. So only 4% of them require it, and about 60%, will accept it or recommend it or things like that. Specifically, PCAT scores can help your application if your GPA is lower. And when I go into the data at the end, you'll kind of see the average GPA, the average, things like that. But, the only way to get your GPA back up is to retake a class. And everybody knows that's expensive, that takes time, especially if you're about to graduate in May. So PCAT scores can really help to offset a GPA if it's lower and not able to be corrected in the time that you're wanting to apply to pharmacy school. So in terms of data, so when we look at PharmCAS, we look at all of the different applications, and we usually get around, I had a slide for that, but maybe not. We usually get around 16,000 different applicants. And so this is the average science GPA is around a 3.1, and then the overall GPA is around a 3.3. And like I said, that's average, and so that can be higher at some more competitive schools or lower. And so if your GPA is around that, then you have a good probability of being accepted. This just gives a breakdown in terms of the race and ethnicity of our applicant pool. You can see that, we're really focusing, my position specifically is really focusing on, trying to get more underrepresented minority students interested in pharmacy, interested in STEM. I know that there are so many barriers that we face at times in terms of, educational disparities, being a first generation. So really just Pharm for me is one of those things that gets you thinking about pharmacy, at least early, so that we can start to increase those numbers. But this gives you an idea of the different race and ethnicities of our student pharmacists. Gender, as I mentioned, 62.9% is female, 37 male. And as I mentioned in the work-life balance, or the reason why people go into pharmacy, a lot more women choose to do that because of that very reason. It's just really well-rounded, work-life balance, opportunity to excel. There's still more work to be done, but definitely, great for women and for men and everyone's personal well-being. So I'll pause. Oh, maybe there are some questions. Hold on, I'm just talking away and I didn't even see these in here. So I'll stop for a second and answer some questions. When do you start applying for pharmacy school? So the applications for pharmacy school actually opened July 1st. So you can start applying to school as early as July of your senior year. Now let's talk about the different types of pharmacy programs, because pharmacy is one of the only, well, very, very few, but I'm going to say only schools that, or health professional careers that do not require you to have a bachelor's degree for some programs, because we have some 0 to 6 programs, they're called different things, early assurance, 0 to 6, but there are some programs where you can actually do 2 years of pre-pharmacy school in undergrad. And then once you go into your junior year of college undergrad is when you actually start your PharmD program. So potentially 6 years after you graduate from high school, you could become a doctor of pharmacy. So applying to pharmacy school depends upon the different programs that you're interested in, the different deadline dates for that school. Even though the application opens in July, I think the first deadline date is maybe September 1st or October 1st. So just being mindful of that. And then the last deadline date is going to be that June 1st. So within that year that you're wanting to apply, that's when you start to look to do that. If you are not applying to pharmacy school until a later, if you are not applying to pharmacy school until a later application cycle, do requests from recommendations save on PharmCAS until, yeah. So that's a good thing. So if you are applying later, or even if you apply to go to school this fall, but then you decide, you know what, I need another year, you can roll over a lot of those supplemental materials into your new application. So yes, you can do that. What is the maximum amount of time to retake the PCAT? So that really depends. You know, most people say 2 or 3 is good. Some of the schools will take the best score. Some of the schools will take an average of the scores. So you may want to know that as well. But I would say that, you know, there has been, you know, some research done that like 2 or 3 times taking the PCAT is usually, they don't see much change in the scores. So what % of applicants will take the PCAT if it's not required? That's actually a good question, and I don't think we have captured that data. And so I would, if I had to guess, I would say about, well, that guess may have went down dramatically because of the new cycle. Because we, like all of California, doesn't require the PCAT, so none of those students will probably not take it. So I'm not sure. I can look for that information, but I know that number is decreasing and decreasing very rapidly. So I was going to give you an estimate from, you know, last year's data, but that would be drastically different for this year since only 4% of it require it now. As a first generation student, what are some tips you have for me to become a competitive applicant for pharmacy school? So one of my tips, I'm not sure what year you are, but I would really just kind of start early in terms of exposing yourself to pharmacists. So we ask a question on our applications, or maybe it's when students get into pharmacy school, but we ask them, why did you choose pharmacy? And the number one answer is, I have a friend or I know someone who's a pharmacist. Well, if you're a first generation student, that probably ain't your answer, because I didn't know any pharmacists growing up. You know, I didn't know anyone who went to college growing up. And so if you want to be competitive, I would just encourage you to take some time to try to, you know, go to your local drugstore and just have a conversation with the pharmacist. See if you can ask them a little bit about their career path. Ask them about pharmacy school. Pharmacy students also love to engage with prospective students. So like when we do our takeovers and you message them, you know, they can give you some tips on that as well. There are some student pharmacist associations like SNAPA, and a lot of those students are first generation as well, or they're underrepresented minority students. And so there are so many resources, but my biggest thing would just be to gain exposure early so that you have a better insight into the profession. And so that way you kind of know how to tailor your responses, especially during your interview, and kind of navigate that process. And then really building relationships at your undergraduate institution to do any type of internships or get research experience that you can get. What are different levels of degrees and how long does it take to get a degree? So that's a great question. So there is the Doctor of Pharmacy, which is your PharmD, but there's also a lot of dual degree programs. So there's a lot of PharmD MBA, and that's because there's a lot of pharmacists wanting to open their own pharmacy. Like everyone's competing with, CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, but there is value in having that community pharmacist there that people trust, and so a lot of pharmacists are getting those dual degrees. There's a lot of pharmacists getting a PharmD and an MPA, Masters of Public Health, because they're going to work for the federal government, the FDA. There's also a lot of master's degrees in the pharmacy sciences. So, for example, there is a student that got a master's in pharmaceutical science and works for L'Oreal, the makeup company. So just kind of learning how, different chemicals, because, our makeup and stuff should be FDA approved, but, you leave it to the person creating it to be, mindful of our health. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So there's so many different career pathways. And you can also get a PhD in pharmaceutical science if you want to become a professor, if you specifically want to go into academics. People with PharmDs go into academia as well, but those are just some of the different levels of degrees that you can get within pharmacy. Can you roll over your letters of recommendation? Oh, I think I answered that one. Do you know how long schools are not requiring the PCAT? I think that's about to be a thing. I honestly believe it's 4% now, but it may go down to 1 or 2, So I think that, I don't know how long. I know that I know that schools who previously have not required the PCAT have not re-required it. So if a school got rid of the PCAT, it's very rare that they start requiring it again. And so I just kind of foresee that being a new norm. Can I apply to 2 schools for early consideration and later apply for 2 schools? So this is the thing, Kelly. We actually, PharmCAS, have got rid of early decision. So last year was the last year that you could actually apply for early decision. And the thing about early decision, the reason why you asked if you could apply to 2 schools was because when you applied to early decision and got accepted, it was kind of an honors agreement that you wouldn't apply to other schools because this school accepted you, they accepted you early. And so there's no longer early admissions. And so you can apply to as many schools as you want earlier in the application cycle. There's no deadline for early admissions. But yes, you can absolutely do that. Does it matter if the reference is a professor or can it be unassociated with the school, like a boss? Also, does it matter the type of professor, like a science versus a math professor? So that's a great question. And the answer is yes, you can have a letter of reference from someone who is not at your school. For example, if you have done an internship somewhere, or if you are involved in any sort of extracurricular like community service, there has been a lot of people that have been working in different ways with the COVID pandemic at like a nonprofit organization. And so that can really speak to your passion for serving the community. So yes, there are so many different ways that you can get references from non-professors, non-science professionals, but it has to make sense. It has to still connect to why you want to go into pharmacy. Every mother loves their child, but, I probably would not have your mom or relative or anyone, write a letter. But yeah, anyone who you've had some direct experience that can speak to your career and educational goals, right on, you can do that. Are there any good pre-pharmacy experiences that undergraduate students can engage in? So yes, there were a lot of pre-pharmacy school camps. I know I get, because virtual a lot of things have gotten stopped, and so there were a lot of pharmacy camps which they have tried to do virtual. There's a lot of STEM programs. There's a lot of shadowing experience, and it just has not. It's been halted for a minute. But yes, I still encourage you, if you want to get that exposure, that pre-pharmacy experience, to contact a pharmacy school near you, to look on the Pharm for Me website. We post stuff like that at times, or to reach out to me and I can help you try to find something as well. But I will say that there were so many opportunities, but they have, and the PEP program is another one. There are 7 or 8 schools of pharmacy that have pharmacy tracks, and so that's another great opportunity. But yes, there are still available, but they are a little limited or kind of delayed for this year. Would you say having background in research is beneficial to include in my PharmCAS application? Yes. Research is always great to have. I remember, I went to school in Nebraska, and I remember my first, as an undergrad, I remember my first research experience where it was research on tattoos and like understanding why people got tattoos and the meaning. And so when I graduated from undergrad, I had a published article. So, when you write papers and you got to list your bibliography, and it'd be like 6 or 7 names on there, but Rosie Walker was one of them. And so you can put that on your resume. And so that's great to get that in undergraduate, even if it's just a small contribution that you made. It's something great to have on your resume. It's also great in terms of, displaying your academic ability. So anytime you're able to participate or do any sort of research, I would encourage it just to make you more well-rounded, because it is a great experience and it does help in other components of just learning how to research, learning how to study, and things like that. At my institution, there is a 2-year program for pre-pharmacy, but the pharmacy advisor strongly recommends I finish my bachelor's first. What are the pros and cons of a 2-year program? Okay, this is a good question, anonymous attendee, because I struggle with that too. So this is my personal experience. I don't have no data to back this up, but I'm just telling you. So I believe some of the pros are, of course, if you're very focused and you're ready to make money and you want to make it soon, you're passionate about pharmacy, you don't need to explore anything else, I would say that is a great option. I know that a lot of students go to college so that they can get a good paying job. And so why would I wait 8 years when I can do it in 6 years? Why would I pay 2 additional years of classes when those 2 in undergrad can be covered with Pell Grants and financial aid, because you don't get Pell Grants in grad school? So those are some of the pros. Some of the cons is that it is very intense. And so sometimes I know I enjoyed all 5 years. Yes, it took me 5 years, but I enjoyed all 5 years of my undergraduate experience, just because this is like such a time where you are developing as a person. It's a time where you're really experiencing different things. That's why people take gap years, they travel abroad and backpack. Once you start working, you kind of get into this rhythm of this new norm of your lifestyle. And so I think sometimes people discourage it because they think that as a sophomore going into their junior year of an undergrad, you may not fully know, what it is that you want to do. But if your parents are pharmacists, if you've been, if you dressed up as a pharmacist every Halloween, like if it's something you really, really know you want to do, then I would say go for it. But if you are still kind of exploring, or if you want to just kind of take your time to really experience your undergraduate years and then go on into a professional program, so it really just depends on the person. What subjects are on the PCAT? I had a slide and I took it out because, I used to really, really talk about the PCAT. But so the PCAT has the biology, the comprehensive reading. You do have an essay. So there are like the science component, the math component, the analytical understanding component, and then the essay. And so there are a lot of practice PCAT tests that you can take that Pearson administers, that you can take for free. You can take extensive classes. I feel like the biggest part of standardized tests, and it may just be me, but it's just the timing. It's just so much information all at one time. And so I always encourage students to take practice tests so that you can just get familiar with the test. You can get familiar with the questions and how they're asking things and phrasing it. But those are some of the subjects on there. It's going to be math, science, reasoning, and then the essay. Will one of your references have to be a pharmacist? No, one of your references will not have to be a pharmacist. Would it make sense to be a pharm tech during pharmacy school? I want a job to help support myself through pharmacy school. So pharmacy techs are great. They are great positions because you do get that community pharmacy aspect. But there are so many other types of positions that you can do within the hospital, like a nurse's aide or things like that, if you want to do more patient care centered pharmacy jobs. So pharmacy tech is an excellent option. And there are some pathway programs where if you are in a pharmacy tech and want to go to pharmacy school, they do some preparation there. But if you want to do the community pharmacy side of it, I would strongly recommend pharmacy tech. But if you want to do the patient care side of it, I may recommend something different. Do you know how long personal statements have to be? Like a page and a half, no more than 2 pages, no more than 2 pages. So there's not a character limit in there, but I would just say that's the average amount of a personal statement. Is it possible to access your research about, oh, you know, girl, I wish I'll try to find it. Okay, I'm gonna tell y'all my age now. So I graduated from undergrad in 2002. And so that was when you had to go to the library, look in the card catalog, get the book out of there. So if I see it online, and I'm flattered, thank you, appreciate you. If I find it, I will give it to Tony and have him share it with you. But yes, and I'm sure there's so many studies that are more advanced about tattoos, but that was very interesting. But yeah, that was it wasn't digital online back then. I actually had to go to the book, to the journal book to get it. And my mama got it somewhere. I can call her and see if she can dig it out, because I had to make photocopies. If you wanted to enter a program fall 2023, should I start my applying summer 22 or summer 2023? Yeah, so let me picture this now. If you want to start in the fall, then yes, you want to start applying in, no. So, okay, so I want to go to school coming up this November. Then I would have had to apply last July. Yes, so you're right. The summer before, 2020, you know, I don't be knowing what today's date is. It's hard for me to remember years and things like that. So yes, if it's the summer before the fall semester, so if it's July and you want to start classes that next September, then yes, you apply the year before. So you would apply in 2022 to enter classes in 2023. What are some trends that you see in students applying in PharmCAS that are not making them stand out? Well, that's a good question, because if anything, it would be not having certain prerequisites, because there are some schools that do require specific prerequisites and they don't waver much from that. And so if you don't meet those prerequisites, then you have to take them in the summer. You have to do some sort of supplementing those prereqs. So that's really important when you're looking at the PharmCAS system to kind of know what the prereqs are. Other things that may not stand out is their involvement. You know, as I mentioned, you know, when you're writing your personal statement, you kind of allude to, you know, your academic or your leadership ability. And sometimes that doesn't shine through if you never did anything but just go to class, you know, if you wasn't involved in anything. So those are some things that may not make that applicant stand out and as opposed to others. If you take the PCAT and don't get the score you want, would you be able to not report that score? Ooh, see, no. The thing is, when you take the PCAT, you put the school code in there before you even take the test. And so that's how they already know. Now, the only thing you could do, but then it's going to be extra time and money, is just to take the PCAT and then have them add the schools you want later. But when you before you even take the PCAT, you indicate your school code or the PharmCAS code, and then it automatically goes. The only way you could not have the scores reported is if you just take it and don't put a school in, but then you have to go back and pay to add the score. Would minoring in a non-STEM discipline help distinguish my PharmCAS application? So you want to know what's funny? Minoring or majoring, there is I should have did that data for you, because obviously the top majors of students that apply to pharmacy school are biology, chemistry, some sort of science. But there are psychology majors, there are communications majors, there are teaching majors. You know, there are a lot of different, there was even a music major. Now, that's a real story, got accepted. And so there are so many people that do major in different fields. But yes, minoring in a non-STEM, especially if it's something like sociology, psychology, some sort of human development minor, that would be really help in kind of justifying the different career pathway that you may be interested in going to. All right, perfect timing. The last question, and I have a couple more slides about just more information. How many extracurricular community service hours do you recommend for competitive applications? So there's really no magic number. I would just say that, you know, because you can look at it two different ways. You could do a lot of different things, you know, to gain a lot of different experience, or you can do one thing for an extended period of time and actually, you know, become somewhat of an expert in that area. So there's no number per se. Most students heavily do extracurriculars in their, you know, 2 years of their college experience, whether that's freshman, sophomore, junior. So having at least, I think, 2 years of solid experience is great. But you can definitely, you know, get more or have less, but really in that one area. All right, so those were the questions. And now I will just go with my last couple slides. So I just wanted to point out other ways that you can stay connected with Pharm for Me. So Pharmacy Week, well, October is National Pharmacy Month. And so Pharmacy Week is October 18th through the 22nd this year. And so this is a great week where we celebrate pharmacists. We have a giveaway. We do a Q&A with students on our social media, a Q&A with admissions representatives, so you can actually ask the people that are looking at your applications their perspective. We do different videos and ways that we celebrate. So just kind of pencil that on your calendar. If you want to learn more about pharmacy, you can do it during that week. And if you're following us on social media, we'll make sure to remind you. We also have a virtual pharmacy school fair. And actually, let me put the link in here because y'all might not click in this PowerPoint, and then you won't find it. So it's a free fair. It's on September 22nd. I'm putting the link in right now. So you can click that link and you can go register now, but this is a great opportunity for you to actually chat with our different schools of pharmacy. So you can, like, if you want to chat with the school in the state that you live in, this is a great chance to register for this fair. So it's September 22nd, and it's from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so you can really have a great opportunity to chat with them there. So I should have had me some water. I didn't even bring none on my table. But are there any other questions, or let me go back and see. Oh yes, Pharmacy Week is free too. All of it's virtual, online, and it's all free. So yes. Well, if there are not any other questions, I want to thank you all for your time. I know everybody gets so zoomed out, but thank you so much for all of the engagement. I appreciate the questions. I wish I could see all of you, but I just wish you the best of luck in all of your educational and career endeavors. And the contact information is here, and my email address, I didn't put it up there, but I manage Pharm4Me. So if you DM, I'll get that. And PharmCAS is managed by someone else. But R. Walker, Rosie Walker is my name, rwalker@aacp.org is my email, and so you can feel free to reach out. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you so much, Rosie. Thank you so much for leading tonight's discussion. Just as a reminder to all the attendees, SHPEP webinars are posted within a week of the live viewing. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with everything SHPEP and within the health professions. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, bye.